He was 71 years old, retired engineer, walked 2 miles every morning, watched what he ate, took his medications without fail. His wife found him on the floor of the bathroom at 7:14 a.m. on a Tuesday in January. He was already gone. The coroner listed the cause of death as cardiac event. What it did not list, what it almost never lists, was the chain of physiological events that started the moment he stepped into a hot shower on a cold winter morning with a cardiovascular system that was already running at its most vulnerable point of the entire day. My name is Dr. Robert Caldwell, cardiothoracic surgeon, 30 years in the operating room, over 2,000 chests opened. I want to tell you about a danger that exists in the most ordinary room of your home and kills far more people over 60 than almost anyone realizes. Before I explain the mechanism, and the mechanism is something I want you to understand completely because understanding it is the entire protection, I need to leave you with something I will come back to at the very end of this video. There is a thermometer in a bathroom. An ordinary one. We will come back to what that thermometer represents. Hold that. Let me tell you about Japan first, because Japan has been studying this problem longer, more systematically, and with more forensic precision than any country on Earth. And the data they have accumulated is something every cardiologist in America should be required to know about and share with every patient over 60 they see. Researchers reviewed all sudden bath-related deaths handled by the Tokyo Medical Examiner's Office from 2009 to 2011, 3,289 cases. Over 90% of the victims were elderly adults. More than 90% of these deaths occurred at home. And circulatory system diseases, heart disease, stroke, cardiovascular pathology, accounted for more than 54% of all pathological findings contributing to these deaths. Cardiac lesions alone were the most common single finding at 45.5%. A separate study from Kagoshima Prefecture reviewed 2,689 bath-related death cases from 2006 to 2019. 90% of victims were aged 65 or older. The single most common medical history in these victims was hypertension, present in 45.1% of all cases. Not a coincidence, a mechanism. Nationwide, researchers estimated these deaths were occurring at a rate of approximately 19,000 per year, expected to reach 25,000 annually by 2025, and over 27,000 by 2035 as the elderly population grows. Bath-related deaths in Japan exceed traffic fatalities, and the vast majority of the deaths happen on cold winter mornings in unheated bathrooms. Deep sigh. Now I need to explain the mechanism, because once you understand exactly what is happening inside the cardiovascular system during a hot shower, you will understand why the morning timing, the bathroom temperature, and the water temperature are not incidental details. They are the entire danger. Here is the sequence. Step 1. The cold bathroom. A person over 60 walks from a warm bedroom into a cold, unheated bathroom on a winter morning. The ambient temperature may be 60, 55, even 50 degrees Fahrenheit if the bathroom has poor heating. The cold air immediately triggers vasoconstriction. Blood vessels tighten, peripheral resistance rises, blood pressure spikes. In a person whose morning blood pressure is already at its daily peak, because blood pressure naturally surges in the early morning hours as cortisol rises and the body prepares for the day. This cold exposure adds a vasoconstriction spike directly onto an already elevated baseline. The heart is working harder before the shower even starts. Step 2. First contact with hot water. The moment hot water hits the body, the cardiovascular system reverses direction. Blood vessels dilate rapidly in response to heat. The heart rate increases as the body tries to move blood faster to dissipate heat through the skin surface. Here is where the age-specific danger becomes critical. Research measuring the double product, systolic blood pressure multiplied by heart rate, which is the standard clinical measure of myocardial oxygen demand, showed something that should stop every cardiologist cold. In young people, the double product stays essentially constant during hot water immersion. Their cardiovascular systems adapt smoothly. In elderly people, the double product increases immediately upon immersion. The heart's demand for oxygen surges at exactly the moment it is being asked to do more. In a heart with any degree of coronary artery disease, any narrowing of those vessels, any plaque, That sudden spike in myocardial oxygen demand against a backdrop of potentially reduced coronary blood flow is the exact constellation of conditions in which a cardiac event can occur. This is the first danger window. The first 4 minutes of a hot shower in an elderly person is a cardiovascular stress test. Nobody told you that, but it is what the physiology shows. Takes a beat. And then there is a second danger window, and this one is different, more silent, more insidious. Approximately 4 minutes after entering hot water, something changes in the elderly cardiovascular system that does not change in young people. Sympathetic tone, the activation of the sympathetic nervous system that was initially trying to maintain blood pressure, begins to withdraw. The parasympathetic system gains ground. Blood pressure starts to fall. Heart rate begins to slow. The blood vessels that dilated to release heat are now pooling blood in the periphery, in the legs, in the skin, away from the brain. The European Society of Cardiology specifically identifies heat and hot baths as recognized triggers for both vasovagal syncope and classical orthostatic hypotension. The threshold for losing consciousness in this setting is stark. Cessation of cerebral blood flow for just 6 to 8 seconds is sufficient to cause loss of consciousness. Systolic blood pressure dropping to 60 millimeters of mercury is associated with syncope. In a person standing in a slippery shower with stiff arteries and age-impaired baroreceptors, the pressure sensors in your blood vessel walls that normally compensate for blood pressure drops within seconds, that 6 to 8 second window can mean a fall onto tile in a closed space, alone. This is why the Tokyo data shows what it shows. The sequence is not random. Cold bathroom triggers vasoconstriction and blood pressure spike. Hot water triggers vasodilation, blood pressure drop, and a spike in myocardial oxygen demand. 4 minutes in, sympathetic tone withdraws. The person feels suddenly lightheaded, grabs the wall, or loses consciousness. If there is underlying cardiac disease that nobody knew about, and research consistently shows that angina pectoris can produce ECG changes, including ventricular tachycardia, during ordinary bathing in elderly patients, the event is not lightheadedness. It is a cardiac event, followed by loss of consciousness, followed by drowning in standing water. And the certificate reads cardiac event, and the shower is never identified as the mechanism, and the person's family never has the conversation that might have saved them. Silence for 2 seconds. Now let me be clear about something important. I am not telling you that hot showers cause heart attacks in everyone. I am not telling you to take cold showers. And I am absolutely not telling you that the research on habitual hot bathing is without benefit. In fact, a large Japanese cohort study found that habitual hot water bathing, 5 or more times per week, was associated with lower arterial stiffness, lower pulse wave velocity, and lower cardiac loading markers. Regular, properly managed hot bathing, over time, appears genuinely cardioprotective in the research. The problem is not the hot water. The problem is the specific cardiovascular conditions under which that hot water hits an aging body on a cold morning. The temperature differential, the timing, the duration, and the physiological state that 60-plus-year-old arteries bring into the bathroom every single day. The Japanese expert committee that reviewed this data issued specific recommendations. Water temperature below 41 degrees Celsius, that is 105.8 degrees Fahrenheit, for immersion. Duration no longer than 10 minutes. These thresholds were not arbitrary. They were derived from the hemodynamic data showing where the double product increase in elderly people reaches dangerous levels and where the sympathetic withdrawal pattern that leads to hypotensive syncope becomes most likely, for a morning shower specifically, which means stepping into the bathroom during the peak cardiovascular vulnerability window of the entire day. The protective protocol is 5 things, none of them complicated. All of them grounded directly in the physiological mechanisms I just described. First, warm the bathroom before you enter it. The cold to hot temperature differential is a primary driver of the vasoconstriction spike that precedes shower entry. A bathroom heater, a few minutes of running hot water before stepping in, leaving the door open to a warm bedroom. Any of these reduces the thermal shock to your cardiovascular system before the shower even starts. This one change may be the single most important modification available, and it is completely free. Second, do not make the water as hot as you would like it. That point where the shower feels perfectly hot, above 41 degrees Celsius, is the point where myocardial oxygen demand in elderly patients measurably increases beyond what it does in younger people. Warm is the target, not hot, not scalding. The comfort of slightly cooler water is a cardiovascular protection your older arteries actually need. Third, limit the duration. The 4-minute mark is where sympathetic tone begins to withdraw in elderly patients. A 7 to 10-minute shower at a safe temperature avoids the blood pressure crash window. If you love a long shower, make it lukewarm. If you need a hot shower, keep it short. Fourth, and this is the one almost nobody knows about, slow down when you are finished. Stepping out of a hot shower into cold air causes a rapid vasoconstriction that spikes blood pressure. The transition is as dangerous as the entry. Turn the water to cooler before finishing. Step out slowly. Dry off inside or in a warm area before exposing yourself to cold air. Give your baroreceptors, those pressure sensors that slow with age, time to compensate for the position change and temperature shift. Fifth, drink a glass of water before your shower. Dehydration compounds every one of these mechanisms. Thicker blood, lower blood volume, impaired baroreceptor function, all made worse by overnight fluid loss. A simple glass of water before entering the bathroom directly addresses the blood viscosity component of the morning cardiovascular danger window. Now let me close the loop I opened at the beginning of this video. The thermometer in the bathroom. That thermometer is not measuring the water temperature. It is measuring the air temperature in the room before you enter. In Japan, where this phenomenon has been studied most carefully, the single strongest environmental predictor of bath-related cardiac death is cold ambient air temperature, not the water, the room. The temperature differential between the cold bathroom you enter and the hot water you step into is the trigger that starts the entire sequence. That thermometer, mounted in the corner of a bathroom that costs nothing and takes 5 minutes to place, is the measurement that tells you whether you are about to ask your cardiovascular system to navigate a cold to hot thermal shock on an already elevated morning blood pressure surge. A reading below 65 degrees Fahrenheit in that bathroom before your shower means the thermal differential is in the danger zone. Warm the room first, then step in. That instrument, and the habit of looking at it, is the cheapest cardiovascular monitoring tool available to anyone over 60. I want to tell you one more thing before we close. The man I described at the beginning of this video, the retired engineer who was found on his bathroom floor at 7:14 a.m. on a Tuesday in January, his wife told me afterward that the bedroom had been warm that night. The bathroom was never heated. It was a cold morning. He always took his shower as hot as he could stand it. He had been doing it that way for 40 years. Nothing about that Tuesday morning felt unusual. Nothing announced itself as different. That is the nature of this risk. It does not announce itself. The shower that has been taken without consequence 1,000 times does not warn you before the 1,001st. What changes is not the shower. What changes is the body that steps into it. The arterial stiffness that has been accumulating for a decade, the morning blood pressure surge that has been climbing for years, the baroreceptor response time that has been slowly lengthening since 65. The shower stays the same. The risk does not. Look, I am a surgeon, not your doctor. Everything I have shared today is grounded in peer-reviewed data from the Tokyo Medical Examiner's Office, the Kagoshima Prefecture Longitudinal Study, the Heijo-Kyo study, and published hemodynamic research on hot water immersion in elderly patients. Before making any changes, if you have existing cardiovascular disease, please discuss them with your own cardiologist. Bring this information to that appointment, because this is exactly the kind of conversation that should happen before a person steps into that bathroom alone at 7 a.m. on a cold January morning, not after. Take care of yourselves. The ordinary moments are where the extraordinary risks hide.